time for convening has arrived, so we'll start this evening. We're starting with a work session. And if we can, the first music from heaven. We'll start with a discussion about the Colonial Pipeline Company's Chattahoochee River Dig Maintenance Project. Mr. Little.
Mayor, how are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Mayor, members of council, Chip Little, Government Affairs Manager for Colonial Pipeline Company. It's a pleasure to be with you all tonight. If I can, before I go any further, let me introduce a couple colleagues that I have with me tonight that will be aiding in the presentation. Mr. Terry Mock, who is our right-of-way and land management manager for this project. Mr. Kelvin Turner, who is going to be the senior projects lead for this project as well for the Southeast District of Colonial Pipeline. We will be starting a maintenance project later this month on our Line 2, which crosses the Chattahoochee River from Cobb County to Sandy Springs. Line 2 is Colonial's what we call our distillate line. It transports from Houston, Texas to New York City diesel fuel, jet fuel, and some home heating oil. On our system every day throughout the Colonial system, we move approximately 100 million gallons of product a day. Last year in the state of Georgia, where we have over 1,000 miles of pipe, we moved into the state 127 million barrels of product, which is the majority of that is gasoline. The other part of that would be diesel fuel and jet fuel, mainly to Hartsfield Airport. This project will take approximately 10 to 12 months. We will be building a bridge across the river in order to access the line where we need to do the maintenance work. What I'd like to do now is have Terry Mock and Kelvin come up and provide you with a little bit of technical expertise, which I'm not able to provide. Certainly know my limitations when it comes to that. But have them come up and explain to you the bridge that we're going to be building across the river, the work that will be done to create or construct a cofferdam, but also the timelines of the bridge and the fact that the bridge will be removed once the construction is completed. So with that, let me ask them to come up and we'll proceed from there. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for your time today. So as Chip alluded, so we have this maintenance on our Line 2, and it will be on the Sandy Springs side. This drawing in front, basically Cobb County side, the river, this is about 2,000 feet upstream from the Johnson's Ferry Bridge. It is 1,500 feet from the boat ramp that is at the National Park Johnson's Ferry North area. So what we plan to do, we looked at, so we have a maintenance area that is right on the edge of the bank on the Sandy Springs side, and we looked at various ways to get to this location. One was to come down the Fulton County sewer easement that runs parallel to the river from Johnson's Ferry and Riverside Drive intersection. That, because of the Johnson Ferry Road Bridge improvements over the years, plus the city's acquisition of what was going to be a small cul-de-sac with the intersection improvements and the detention basin that is there, the equipment that was necessary to do this work to traverse that was going to be very challenging. And then if we had utilized that approach, the Marsh Creek merges into the Chattahoochee just south of our maintenance location, we would have had to build a bridge, temporary bridge over Marsh Creek, utilizing the same equipment that we're going to utilize to build a trestle bridge across the river. So the footprint and the impact to the trees and the other adjacent landowners would have been much more expensive, and so Colonial looked at another option, which was to use barges, but with the river flow fluctuating as it does, along with the current, illustrates, this is the river. This is a cellular coffer dam that we will construct. They're 23 feet in diameter, so it'll be sheet piling, and then those cells will be filled with an aggregate with gravel, and that will facilitate, we will bring, once our contractor that is building the bridge and puts in the cellular coffer dam, then that will afford our contractor, our pipeline contractor who is building, to move their equipment from the Cobb County side to the Sandy side to start their work. The span of the bridge, it will have, we've been working with the National Park Service, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Chattahoochee River Keepers, the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. So we have applied for all the necessary permits and have collaborated with those stakeholders. The span on the temporary bridge will have 3 40-foot gaps that will allow for boaters, rafters, recreational use to traverse through our work zone safely. We will be posting signage at the Morgan Falls boat ramp, also at the Chattahoochee North boat ramp to advise those recreational users of the bridge and what they will encounter. Once we get the coffer dam in place, we have an excavation that it is out into the water of the river, and then it's partially in the banks of the river. And so we will be running, as we excavate, we will take the surplus soils, we will stockpile them on our existing right-of-way, which encompasses 2 private landowners. We will put the surplus soil here, and then it will be necessary to run large diameter pumps 24/7 to keep the excavation in water during our work. And then once we do the work on the pipeline, then we will backfill. We will work on the restoration of the 2 private landowners, and then we will work our way back out to the Cobb County side. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
So you're going to move that coffer dam across the river as the work progresses, is that correct?
So this coffer dam is just, it's not going to impede the flow of the main channel of the river. It is only here at the
So it will be, all the work will be operated from within that coffer dam, and you'll excavate down under the river, or how are you going to maintain the pipe as you go across?
So the trestle bridge, let me bring another drawing. So the trestle bridge will come from the Cobb County side. It will be able to hold a large crane that will be used to not only put the pile driving the piers to hold the bridge in, but will also be used to build these cells for the coffer dam. So the bridge deck will come across the river, 40-foot gaps in this trestle, and then as we get closer to the Sandy Springs side, this will protrude out into the river. This structure will form a T, and then these cells will be here, and it will enable the crane to sit here for the construction of these cellular cells. And then this work here will be where we're going to be excavating and exposing the pipe. The challenge is, when this pipe was originally put in the early 60s, the methodology then was to blast the bottom of the rock, fracture the rock, dig a ditch, float the pipe out, and lower it into the ditch. And so even with all these cells, we still anticipate getting, because of the fractured rock, water infiltrating into our excavation. So we'll use large diameter pumps.
So you're going to be driving sheet piling for your coffer dam.
Correct.
So that's going to create some noise.
There's going to be noise associated with both the pilings for the bridge and noise associated
With the pumps.
the coffer dam. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Are you replacing the pipe? No, so we periodically run inspection tools through the pipeline. The Colonial is regulated by the U.S. Department of Transportation. inspection tools to the line periodically, and on a very proactive measure, this is part of our system integrity program. So we are excavating the pipe, and we are looking at a feature that we have been monitoring over the years. And it is time now for us to do some preventive maintenance at this location.
Okay, Ms. Rochelle.
One is for Kristen, but I want to ask you, the bridge that goes over, is it actually going to be a bridge that starts on Cobb County and go all the way to?
So it'll fall short of the Sandy Spring side, and where it falls short is cellular copper dam that starts. But when all of this is in place, our contractor will bring in all of their materials and equipment across the span, across the bridge. They will drive across these cells and make landfall on the north side of our excavation and our work area.
But your bridge, because we've always wanted a bridge from Cobb County. Is it something that could be a permanent bridge, or is it something that is a temporary bridge?
It has been permitted for a temporary bridge.
That bridge is in the wrong location for what we need to do, yeah.
And then, Kristen, is this going to affect our trails at all?
Mr. Paulson, I knew you'd get the engineer's interest.
Sorry, I can't help myself. So, a couple of questions. Will this pipe be live and flowing when you're driving all these piles all around it, or are you going to shut the pipe off while you're driving these piles, just in case, you know how the world works?
Sure.
Okay?
So very good question. So, one, the line will stay active. Two, we've hired a third-party firm to provide seismic monitoring. So our engineers have worked with this company to set what the limits,
Vibration limits are?
vibration limits are. So let's just use number one as just a number, not necessarily the threshold. But if number one is the threshold that we would accept, then they will set alarms on the monitoring equipment that will go off well before it gets to the one, so that we know that we're getting within a certain tolerance that we need to stop, take a look at that vibration and make any corrections necessary. So it's a very good question, and we have our own protocols when other developers or contractors are doing work in proximity to our pipe and blasting, say, for water or sewer line. And so we're applying those same standards that we would apply to someone else, a third party, to ourselves. And so those are measures that we have in place to be sure that we stay within those tolerances.
Mr. Lee, you got something?
Yes, Mayor, if you allow me. The pile driving on the Sandy Springs side, have y'all done the same sort of studying of the effect on the houses for the pile driving as you have for the gasoline in the pipe?
Sure. So another good question. So there are 3 residents that we have reached out to. They have allowed us, or one we did today, the other 2 will happen tomorrow. We're have a structural engineer that is doing an analysis, a pre-construction survey of their homes, and then we plan to put seismic instrumentation at each of those properties as well.
What happens if, I'm assuming that with this third-party vendor, that on the other side, if the seismic activity rises to a level that would be impactful to the pipe, you would stop the seismic activity?
We would stop the pile driving activity.
Is that the same consequence if you're on the housing side of it?
It is. We have the same measures of limits. So we'll get a text messaging and a email alerting us that we're getting within those tolerance levels. So
Thank you.
Those same devices that are going to be monitoring the pipeline, there are individual devices that will be monitoring those 3 structures also.
Ms. Mueller?
Mayor Paul?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't done yet, okay? That's okay. Good questions. So, a couple of details here. Are you impact driving these piles, or are you vibration driving them?
I'm going to ask for assistance on that.
This just,
Vibration.
because I've done a bunch of sheet piling where you actually vibrate them in, but I don't know what the soils are.
We're
Because it's less impactful than the impact hammer.
We're doing a vibration down on the, actually a sheet piling, a hammer down, sheet pilings down to
It's
the
a vibratory
bedrock. We're
hammer,
not going into the bedrock.
Not an impact hammer.
Yes, that's correct.
So it's a vibratory hammer, okay. And then, I guess my final question is, in the way the world works, right? Something does happen, and all of a sudden you have a problem with this pipe that's running 120 million gazillion gallons a day. Do you guys have provisions to shut this thing off and confine the area? And if something bad happens, have you got a plan in place to mitigate bad things happening here?
Yes, so one direct item that we're going to do is with our previous work that we attempted to do with the barges, we worked with the Cobb County Marietta Water Authority and put out preventive boom on their water intake that is right there at the Johnson Street
Yep.
Bridge. And then as part of our emergency response preparedness, we have response plans in place in the unlikely event that we would have something that arose.
Okay.
So
And-
yes, all those plans will be implemented and be in place.
And you're going to work on this project for 10 months, but you're not going to be driving pile for 10 months. You're going to drive pile for, what, 2 weeks?
No, sir, it's going to take about 3 to 4 months to actually build the bridge and the coffer cells.
So there'll be some
Once-
pile driving along for 3 to 4 months on occasion.
Close to it, yes, sir.
Okay.
And right now, we're scheduled to work Monday through Friday on this project. So we would start during, not to negate the fact that this is going to be a noisy operation, but we will be operating within the normal operating hours. So, thank you.
Ms. Mueller?
Yeah, so question, can you talk a little bit about the citizen outreach? Because I think you talked about 2 to 3 direct right-of-way impact, but then the homes that are up on the hillside above the banks of the river, there's about 20 to 30.
Yes, so there's there's 2 neighborhoods and then 3 homes along Riverside Drive. So within 1,800 feet of where we cross the river into Sandy Springs, you have River North Parkway with about, I'll say, 18 homes that are either front the river or are in that cul-de-sac and would certainly hear our activities. And so, and then south of there, you have the River North, not River North, but the North River Circle, and then you have Riverside Drive. So there's roughly less than 30 residents, but there's a letter that will be hand-delivered to each of those residents. I will be the one delivering it. If they're home, I will basically convey to them what we're doing. If they're not, I have a leave-behind letter that I'll leave that has my contact information on it. So we wanted to come before this body tonight, make y'all aware of this before your constituents might pick up the phone and call. So you may have already gotten some inquiries from our work, our preparatory work on the South County side. But that was, so those letters will either go out tomorrow or Friday.
Do you plan to hold any like informational meetings, or this will all be through the, I guess, the mail, the drop, the material, and then I guess them a card, and they could call if they have questions?
Yeah, the intent is to be on an individual basis and address each person's individual issues or concerns on their own.
Okay.
So we don't have anything scheduled at this time.
And then the pumps, will they operate 24/7? So while you'll only be doing the driving and the work during normal, following our noise ordinance, I guess our work ordinance, but what about the pumps?
Yes, so again, another good question. So the time frame for the bridge construction is roughly 4 months. Once we get the equipment and start the excavation of the pipeline, then it will be at that point in time, after we have put in certain soil erosion control measures in place, so it won't be initially. We have to put in, these are rock berms that will help filter the water that we're pumping out of the excavation. So there's certain infrastructure we have to put in place before we're actually going to turn the pumps on. And the pumps will only be used during the pipeline work. So long-term, bigger project, 10 to 12 months. anticipated timeline that the pumps might need to be running would be plus or minus 60 days. And again, part of that will be dependent on site conditions. If the river, if it's not like our current conditions where it's raining every other day and significant rainfall and the river's up, then we would anticipate that we're going to have a lot of water. If it happened to be more in summer months and it's lower flow, then we might, it may not be as bad. Now, we are going to use, for the engineer in the room, plus others that may be here for public works, we're going to use, they used to be Godwin pumps, but they make what are called silent pumps. They are not silent as much as you would like, but we also plan to mitigate using, we will probably build something like a baseball backstop and put in 4-inch foam boards to try to mitigate and muffle the noise from traveling. We will also use hay bales, so we will try to get creative in doing some things to try to mitigate the noise. One of the challenges that you mentioned, though, is our work site is down here.
They're way up.
60 feet higher is where the homes are. And so even if we tried to horizontally block it, it's going to want to vertically go. And so that's one of the things we're going to have to, it will be a kind of a field. We'll have to improvise in the field to see what we can do to help mitigate the noise.
Yeah, because if you're going to be measuring the seismic, I guess, is there a way to measure the noise as well? I guess from a decibel.
There are
Decibel.
noise meters, and we can
Yeah.
certainly do that. But it's going to, I will say noise, both with the vibration, driving the piles, driving the sheet piling for the cellular coffer dams, plus the operation of the pumps. Noise is definitely going to be a challenge for us.
Okay. I would say if you don't have a good one, I'd go get one because I guarantee someone's going to get phone calls about that and a decibel level.
Everyone who has an iPhone can easily
Yeah.
download an app that has
Yeah.
pretty
Well.
accurate sound meter on it.
Okay.
Mr. Baumann?
Quick question, couple of questions, quickly though. Is there anything that Sandy Springs is going to be involved with in this process? Any permitting, land disturbance? What, if any, oversight? Maybe that's for, do we have any, there's nothing? So this is a courtesy, I appreciate it,
Yes, when Colonial came in to see us a couple of weeks ago and reviewed the plans with us, I had our community development director come in and review and make sure there weren't any permitting or any other things that we needed to be looking at for them, and we do not have oversight. This is simply for council's awareness and education, and to make sure that we inform the community that this work will be happening.
even if there were a noise ordinance violation, that would be outside, is this work?
No, the noise ordinance still would apply.
Yes. If for work that's completed within Sandy Springs, or what if it's in the river, coming from the river? Meaning, do we enforce from outside? Let's say somebody at Chastain Park in Atlanta is committing a noise violation. We don't have jurisdiction over that, right? So, it's just curiosity as to, where our scope of our oversight starts and stops.
We need to look at that. It's my understanding that a portion of the river is in Sandy Springs' jurisdiction down in this part.
Okay.
So let us review that.
I guess it's a function also for the city, if the citizens need some recourse to make sure, and they know who to contact.
Correct.
So that I would ask that aspect to be coordinated.
Yeah, well, the work zone's definitely in Sandy Springs. The bridge and the crane
Part
coming
of it.
across,
Right.
but this is largely a federal project.
You're right.
It's regulated by the feds and to some extent EPD.
Okay.
The permitting process it would preempt our permitting
Right.
process. But contractors involved in it, our ordinances apply. We talk routinely here about our limitations on work hours when it comes to construction projects. That would apply here in our jurisdiction. We could not stop them from making noise on the Cobb County side other than call Cobb County 911.
Okay. All right. So 2 other quick questions. What's the useful life of this work, and when can we, when in your plans would you be back, doing major work on the river pipeline?
So we are investing quite a large sum of money to do this work with the goal that it would be sometime before we would have to come back.
Is there any estimate on that?
No, but again, I mean, we spend,
Maybe we're 60 years from,
Yeah, but Colonial does a lot of maintenance on its lines.
Yeah.
I know Brandon Mill, a couple of years ago, we closed Brandon Mill while you were doing some maintenance
Yeah.
and replacement there. So we've got a significant amount of their pipeline running through the city. It runs from one end to the other. And
I
they do maintenance on a
guess the
frequent
question
basis.
would be, is there any other major projects in the offing for the next 10 or 15 years in Sandy Springs?
so I can't answer that clearly because these school runs that we run may show something that we need to address again as a preventative.
But you can tell us now there's nothing on the books.
But we just completed in the Jordan 400 relocation to accommodate
Right.
the lighting, not the lighting program, but the express lane.
I was going to say something about that because y'all did an amazing job, and I should have started off by saying that. And I just thank you for the great work that you did and for talking to the neighbors. I did not get one complaint, and I just went to one of their HOA meetings, and they had a concern about the trees, and you already went out there and replaced them. So you did a great job. I have 100% confidence in you guys. So
Okay.
thank you.
Mayor Paul?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So right now, there's nothing to report in terms of, okay, if there was, would you let us know?
Sure, so that's not to say that, so if this was anywhere else but at the base of the Chattahoochee River, our normal maintenance schedule.
I'm not looking about maintenance. This is a major, okay.
This is as abnormal for us as it is.
All right, one other question. Do you ever put live camera feeds on your projects if people want to see what's going on? What's the possibility of without interfering with anybody, certainly individual worker privacy opportunities, for them to do work, is there any opportunity to put a live feed so people can actually see this work?
So I would have to follow up with that. I know
Okay.
that Park Service has restrictions on video and drones and things, so I would have to follow back.
Thank you.
Ms. Mueller, did you have another question? Okay. Anybody else? All right, Dr. Kelly.
I think I have two questions. One, will there be any sort of, website, landing page that just briefly describes this that we can direct?
Another great question. So we will get y'all the contact information. We have a website that is part of the letter for the residents.
Perfect.
It has a QR code on it, so that, and then the signs that we have currently posted at the National Park on the Chattahoochee North, those signs communicating to those patrons also has the QR code. The boat ramp signs have the QR code, and that site will be updated frequently as to the progress of the project. So we already have that. It is activated and live, and we plan to keep that fresh
Okay.
throughout the duration of the project.
Perfect. One last question, because you mentioned signage at the Morgan Falls Boat Ramp. This project is what, about a mile and a half from that?
1.6 miles.
Right, 1.6. Okay, just wanted to confirm. So we won't, people at Morgan Falls won't hear anything, but I guess.
No. So our current outreach is 1,800 feet up and downstream of our location.
Right.
If we find that that's not adequate, then we will step out an additional distance if needed.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation and for briefing us on this. It's very important, and we do appreciate you taking the initiative and coming out and meeting with us. Thank you. All right, moving on, Chief DeSimone and the Fulton County Schools. I want to preface this by saying that, the events in Nashville last week always cause a lot of concern and heartbreak, but particularly concern among parents of school children. So I reached out to Chief DeSimone and asked him to get together with the Fulton Police Department and kind of bring us up to speed on some of the latest. They do a great job of cooperating and communicating, but I thought it was important for council, particularly given the events of the last week, that we be updated on what's going on. So, Chief?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor said, after the tragic events in Nashville, Tennessee, I got a lot of calls. The Mayor's office got a lot of calls just about school safety and what we do here in Sandy Springs. I've got with me tonight Chief Mark Solborski, and he is the Chief of Police for the Fulton County Schools Police. Their headquarters is actually in Sandy Springs on Powers Ferry Road. So Mark and I are friends. We talk at least, well, either me or the deputy chief probably weekly.
It's regular.
Yeah, very regular. Great working relationship with the schools police, and he has the entire county. So he has all the way from Palmetto to Milton and all the public schools in between, except in the city of Atlanta. So he's got a large agency, very busy, very spread out, but anytime I call him, picks up the phone, same way with me or the deputy chief. So we've got a very good working relationship. They are in all the schools, and I'll let Mark talk about that. But, we're constantly doing things together, training, a lot of communication. Actually, we had dinner tonight, and he was telling me about some threats at a school over the spring break here. And I told him, you all saw the email that went out today. Just on Roswell Road, we had a person that was mentally disturbed on narcotics walking down Roswell Road with an AR-15 looking rifle. Twice in a row, yesterday and today. We couldn't catch him yesterday. He disappeared around the Prado. We were able to catch him today with some cameras and a quick police response. And it wasn't a real rifle. It was a airsoft, but it looked just like one. So we have these incidents more frequently than a lot of people know. And it's probably, is in a police chief's world, that's what keeps you up at night. We never want that. The only thing that we can do is train, and more train, and have good partnerships. So with Mark, we've got a great partnership. Just a few weeks ago, we had a large fight at Riverwood High School, and I believe a teacher, and correct me if I'm wrong, they've got a device they can push for, they need help, like a fight. It was such a big fight, she pushed it more than she should have, and it set off an active shooter alarm. And we were screaming in there. Chief Solborski was actually on his way there, and our cars, I guess you were on Hertz Ferry?
Yeah,
correct?
I was on Hertz. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just right around the corner when Craig gave me a call.
And it was coming out as an active shooter event. We were there in less than 2 minutes. School police were on scene, and we have a very good, robust response. But our guys were going in like it was an active shooter. And in today's world, when those alarms go off, what do the kids do? They pull out their cell phones, they video it, and then they immediately shoot it out saying, Mom, Dad, there's an active shooter at Riverwood High School. Because the alarms are going off, and they don't know any, and they're hearing screaming and yelling because of this massive fight. So it's stressful. It's stressful for police chiefs. It's stressful for the officers on the scene, and we handled it, very quickly and with no problems. School police took the kids and the perpetrators in that incident and dealt with them. So we just wanted to come here tonight and let you all know that we've got a great working relationship. And I've told you before, so the Fulton County School Police only handle the public schools of Fulton County. We have a lot of Jewish schools here, Christian Catholic schools, and most of those school resource officer functions are handled by the Sandy Springs Police Department in an off-duty fashion, officers who are off-duty. So, Chief, if you have anything to add?
No, it's really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I know Ken called me last week and jumped at the chance to get out here, even though it is spring break. I was doing yard work all day. But, that's what we do, right? So, as Ken said, really just a great partnership, and it always has been, since Sandy Springs' inception. And for those of you who don't know, most of you may have had kids that came up through the public school system here. Just to kind of give you an idea, and I won't bore you with all the details, like Chief DeSimone said, we don't have the city of Atlanta, so to speak. We got the north end of the county and the south end of the county. We've got 108 school sites. In all of that, we've got about 400 square miles. that they sit in, right? And so we've got 13 other jurisdictional partners that we have to work with, right? And we all know that there's nothing that doesn't happen inside a community that doesn't work its way into a school, and we know that things don't happen in the school that don't work their way out into the community. So those partnerships and that level of communication is always needs to be top notch. So that's kind of my one of the world. Like I said, you guys have always been there, for us in our time of need. Just like we had that last week over at Riverwood, and it's always been a really great working relationship.
And to add to that, we have such a close working relationship that the chief called me, I don't know, it's probably been 12 months ago now, and said they have an opportunity for a grant for a firearms simulation type piece of equipment, over $100,000, and could they house it in our new police headquarters? They can train on it, we can train on it. Kids going through the criminal justice programs at the high schools can train on it, and it's anything from shooting events to de-escalation events in a virtual reality world that's like 300 degrees around them. So we've actually got a space in our new headquarters where we're going to put this device. It's a FATS machine. Some of you all have heard that term before, but it's more modern and updated. And I'm just, proud that Chief Silbersky asked us to be a partner, because he's got a lot of other police agencies in this county that he could approach and say, would you partner with us? But he chose Sandy Springs. So that goes to show the strength of our relationships together.
Any questions? Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Chiefs. So I'm pleased to see you have this cooperation, because everybody's watching this stuff on TV. One of the things we talked about last summer was putting license plate reader cameras in the Fulton County schools, and we were back and forth with this idea. And I know Chief DeSimone, you thought that was a good idea. We've been back to the school. First off, Chief, the other chief, what's your take on those? And do you know what the status of that whole negotiation or conversation is? Are these cameras going to be put into the schools? Do you know?
So are you referring to license plate readers, or are you talking about speed zones?
Yeah, I thought.
It's speed with license plate readers attached.
I thought it was all one and the same.
No, it's not. It's actually two separate pieces of equipment.
Okay.
License plate readers. We actually do have license plate reading technology on all of our campuses now. So that is one thing, and that is open to. We've already opened that piece of technology up to all of our jurisdictional partners. We share that across the county already. Now, if you're talking about the speed zone cameras, we do have a couple of agencies, and let me preface this with it was very new technology for local police departments to venture down that road within the past couple of years. All right, so I don't know if anybody has followed the legislation that is going on. There's actually a revision and multiple revisions to things going on down at the Capitol.
Several.
Right. So there's a lot of different bills that have been introduced with some different language about the nuances of these camera systems. Now, the overall concept of the license plate, not the license plate, now I've got talking license plate readers. Overall concept of the speed detection devices, the school speed zone detection devices, is actually a force multiplier in my book. It's actually, I think it's a really good piece of technology. It's not an end-all, be-all. It's just another tool in the belt, so to speak, right? So I think that there is some useful pieces of that can be used. It does take, without a doubt, when used appropriately, it's got some really good results. Okay, so there's a lot of good things that come out of that. Now, like I said, and I go back to before, am I for it? Absolutely. I think in its concept, it's actually a very, very good thing. Now, with the pieces of legislation that are actually outstanding, we got to kind of see how all that falls. Now, I go back to there are permits through the state for every speed detection device that every agency has to run. Okay. Technically, Sandy Springs Department of Public Safety, Police Department would own these pieces of equipment. But the actual permit that goes to the state has to be signed off on by the superintendent of the schools. That's just the way legislation is written right now. So we're holding half of the bag but there's no accountability piece on the back end of that. And I always say that because it is a two-way street, and I think that there's got to be some held accountability on both sides. When this equipment started hitting the streets, so to speak, and you started having police departments that were utilizing them, obviously, in the interest of school zone safety and traffic safety around schools, all of y'all are very familiar with the traffic around our schools, right? And all the other schools that sit in Sandy Springs, right? It's a good piece of equipment to be used when it's used appropriately. Now, unfortunately, not everybody uses it that way. There are certain limitations within the law that are very well specified as to when this equipment can be used, how it should be used, where the funds go, and all the rest of that. But, as we found out, there's not a lot of oversight to that. The oversight actually falls to the Board of Education, who has nothing to do other than sign the piece of paper that goes with that. So with that speed detection equipment comes along with some assurances, and I think that, like I said, we've got a really great working relationship. I don't see any shortcomings as far as that goes, but there are other agencies around Georgia, not just in Fulton County, that have probably used them inappropriately, and they've been just garnering funds off of this and being used outside of the school zone times, outside of the state law. There's really not a whole lot to do other than appeal your ticket in court, and then hopefully it works its way up. If you want to take a $75 ticket all the way to, the upper levels of court and fight that out, we haven't seen any change in the laws. Now, that's kind of a long answer to all that, but I just wanted to give you some full context as to what kind of the hurdles that we're looking towards.
Some cities in Fulton County took this technology, instead of running the speed cameras during school hours, they were doing it 24/7 on the weekends, which was totally inappropriate. So that's where a lot of this.
And the new law that just passed regulates that. Basically 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after the start of school and the end of school.
It does, and it like I said, though, it still doesn't take the superintendent's name off of the permit that has to go to the state, right? So, like I said, it goes as a two-way street. We have to make sure that the people that are running these and the departments that are running these actually have updated times, that they're supposed to be setting them for to make sure that they're in compliance as well. But the other side of that is that we get the complaints just like everybody else does. And the only thing that we can say is, well, the superintendent signed it and handed it over. It's kind of like signing a blank check to a local jurisdiction, right? So there's got to be some assurances on the back end that we're checking compliance as well. What does that look like? Probably nothing more than what you have to maintain for those speed records for any radar or LiDAR detection device. But we just need probably a copy of that and some reassurance that they're being run appropriately.
All right, so just so you know, for our police department, the chief accountability guy is standing right next to you.
I'm aware.
My suggestion is, let's figure out how to do this. This seems to me this is a good idea.
And
it's been languishing for a while. Let's move this thing along. If there's anything we can do to help, but there's the guy you need to talk to about accountability, because that's what he does.
Well, and this is also a policy issue, which is not in your job description. But we have had an agreement sitting on the superintendent's desk, not your fault, not your problem, for several months, and also sent back some things that we quite frankly have some issues with, but that's something that we need, and we'll just have to have some conversations with the superintendent to try and move some of this stuff forward. The plate readers, I think, are very important because Chief DeSimone's made very clear that those plate readers can give us enormous advantage in seconds and maybe minutes if there is a problem. If those plate readers identify somebody who's a known problem, then we're alerted before 911 gets the call. And those seconds in those situations are literally life and death. So those are something that we desperately want to make sure we're working together on. The speed detection issue, I live right by Riverwood. I see the issues, traffic backs up there, people get frustrated. And they zip around, and we have a lot of kids who walk to school in that area. And I'm sure it's the same with some of the other schools in there. I just happen to live close enough that I get to observe it on a daily basis at Riverwood. And we've got kids that are in a dangerous situation with the amount of traffic and some of the speed that moves through there. So anything we can do, any tools that we can have available for all of our sake to mitigate that speeding issue through these school zones is something that we're very interested. It's not about revenue for us. It never has been about revenue for us. It's about deterrence. And anything we can do to deter speeding through these areas is something that we have a great interest in, as well as the plate readers, which could give us an advantage in a crisis situation.
And for technology clarification, Councilman Paulson, the speed detection devices have license plate reader technology in those also. Yes. So
This whole discussion was about both of them. I guess, son, there's two issues here we got to be working through.
I think we've got them with the license plate readers, like going into the parking lots and things like that, but the speed detection devices on the streets, that has both speed and license plate reading technology in one device.
Cool. Mr. Baumann?
So thank you both. Thank you for your service. Chief, we spoke. This was the next morning when they released the body cam footage, and it would take your breath away. The response of the officers, you and I had this conversation. I mean, I have no expertise, but if that's used in training around the country, the speed, hearing their calm voices, which has to come from the result of training and just integrity and character, was really quite remarkable. And I know we bring that with our forces. We've seen the training, and God forbid you all ever have to do that. And it was interesting to hear the story about the other day, but really quite a remarkable video, and so grateful, frankly, for the cameras, for people to be able to see that. Many years ago, maybe there would have been some resistance to cameras, but having that footage was really amazing. I wanted to ask the chief, you mentioned 180 sites. Now, don't give away anything that you can't publicly, but is it public information about how many people are in your force? Is it a one-to-one? And if you can't do that, don't. But in terms of anything you can share with the numbers, or is it a roaming force, or do some places have on-site? How does that work?
Sure. Yeah, it's 108 school sites.
8 or 80?
108.
Oh, 108. Okay, I wrote down 180.
And I can. It's really no secret. We do have all of our high schools are allocated 2 officer positions in each one. All of our middle schools have 1. Our elementary schools are covered by a patrol function. So we do have a free-floating unit that is not school attached that actually has primary responsibility of covering our elementary schools.
I'll leave it to you guys to make the decisions. If there's anything that we need, Chief, that you need from, as Councilman Paulson alluded to, if there's anything that's appropriate and because the safety of these kids and the teachers and the employees is really, it's astonishing to see these incidents repeat themselves. So if there's anything that we need to be doing, whether to supplement, I certainly would want to, I know all of us would want to hear what resources we can consider to make certainly our public schools for sure, but all of our schools as safe as they possibly can in this environment.
Yes, sir. We're fortunate here in Sandy Springs because you all fund us very well, and our equipment's top-notch. Just today on this call I referenced earlier, when you're like we are going up against a suspect with a rifle, we're at a great disadvantage. So I heard them on the radio. They were stopping. They were putting on their plates. They're putting on their helmets. They're grabbing their rifles, and that's just to make it even. And we're lucky here in Sandy Springs because we're well funded, and we have rifle plates, we have helmets, and we have long rifles to be able to counter this threat.
And that was what the guy ultimately turned out to be an airsoft?
Yeah, that was
but
this afternoon.
I don't want to detract too much, but in our state, can't somebody just carry around if they have they can walk around with an AR-15, can't they?
They can, yes.
I don't. Fortunately, that's not common, but
right. But we had calls, and we had our intelligence unit, as soon as the call came out, they hit the camera, started looking, had him on a video live, watching him, and said, hey, he's pointing the rifle at passing motorists.
Right. It was the ancillary behavior. It wasn't
Yeah,
just the fact of the AR-15.
When you know, we can stand here with our pistols, but once I pull it out and start pointing at people, that's
Right.
when you violate state law.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Rochelle.
Again, I want to also thank both of you. And I have a question for each of you, Chief Mark. For you, I've spent, my kids went to public school, and I've spent a lot of time there. And I get concerned about a lot of the schools have several entrances and exits, and I want you to address that. And then, Chief Ken, I want to ask you about, do we know the layouts of each of our schools in Sandy Springs, and have we spent time in each of them? Because I know I can speak for North Springs. It's, just really difficult to figure out the layout there. And so I'm just curious if we've spent time in each of the schools.
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, so obviously we do. We've got quite a bit of, quite a few entrances or exits, depending on how you want to put that. We do have some systems internally that will monitor the doors now, especially after the Uvalde incident, where the door was found propped open. Apparently, that was a pretty regular piece of something that they were. Yeah, apparently that was the Uvalde incident in Texas last summer. Apparently that was prior to last summer. That was one of those pieces that came up out of that was the door being propped open, and that was probably a pretty regular piece of something that they just did, right? In absence of policy, that's what became their policy. We do have policies and procedures in the school system that prohibit everything from being left open. We do have emergency buzzers on each door, alarms on each door. So if it does remain open or somebody does go through it, then it alerts us to let us know that that door has been propped open. So we do have assigned number of entrances and exits depending on the school site. So it's very site specific. I guess do you have a specific concern, or is it just the fact that we've got a lot of doors and things?
Well, I think you answered the question. Each of the doors would have an alarm and a camera at the.
Yeah, we do. We've got a very robust camera system out throughout the district. So, and it's all monitored. It can be monitored centrally. I can pull it up on my phone right now. So, depending on what's going on at each individual school site. So, yeah, we do have ways of combating that. And like I said, that was just one of those areas that we looked to improve after the last incident in Texas. So we put a lot of time and effort and energy into that, and just making sure that the policies and barring all the greatest pieces of technology and equipment, you still got to make sure that your staff is doing the right things too. So there's an accountability piece in the staff as well.
Anybody else? All right, Mr. DiGiulio.
Yeah,
I was asking Ken about the layout of the school.
were you not done?
I can speak to that too, or Ken.
Yeah, you spent a lot of time last summer there.
Yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. We do visit the schools, and I was just at one of the high schools, Riverwood, had lunch with the principal. The issue is, it's just like this building right now. If we got a call in here that said somebody's been stabbed in the warming kitchen off the green room, I'm in here every week. I'd be like, where in the heck is that? Mm-hmm. Just like you all would be. Mm-hmm. And it's when you have big buildings like this building, this is small compared to some of these high schools, and they're big. And we get in there as much as we can, but just like you saw in the video, you're relying on what you hear, what you see, and what people are telling you. You don't have time to pull out a map, and when people are getting shot, you've got to go to where the gunshots are, and it's difficult. It's challenging.
Okay. Mr. DiGiulio.
Yeah, Chief, we do a lot of training with our police, and I know you do them with your force too. Do you do any training in the school with the kids that are there of what to do, and have any type of education for them so that they know what to do if a situation arises?
We do, and it is age appropriate. Okay, so the police department, school police department, we're not going to do any full type scenarios with our kids. Okay, there's nothing that we want to shock our kids into, so to speak, because that can cause an inordinate amount of trauma in and of itself. But we do have age appropriate types of educational pieces that we do present along with all the drills that we do. Now in the school system, we've kind of dumbed it down. Okay, we've got basically 4 drills, right? You know, nobody likes to remember a lot of stuff, right? And trying to remember everything under stress is, you know, so we have evacuation drills, which can go for anything from fire or whatever the case may be. We have shelter in place drills, okay? And we have hard lockdown and we have soft lockdown drills. So, and you know, each one of those has got a different piece. If you talk to your kids that are school age, you're probably going to know what each and every one of those are because they're all drilled, you know, in accordance with state standards every year. So, and all those pieces, like I said, we do into, you know, an active shooter piece. I think by state law we're going to have to. I think that's something that we're looking at addressing and probably reaffirming in some of the trainings that we do. But all the kids know that if there's something that's happening inside of school and we put that into a hard lockdown, they all know what that means. Okay, that's basically the active shooter protocol. It could be a hard lockdown for anything. It just means that something's going on inside the building, where a soft lockdown is something that's going on outside the building. So those types of pieces are always trained. Those are, like I said, we institute those into just the regular trainings that we do all throughout the year as a part of the drill protocol that they're all required to do.
Anybody else? Dr. Kelly.
Thank you for being here this evening. I have one question. It's just something that's been on my mind lately. What can the community do to support efforts to keep young people safe and help mitigate some of these issues?
Dr. Kelly, that's a good question. Actually, I was talking about this afternoon with somebody in my office, and I didn't know this, and it has not been confirmed, but I was told by this person that the sister school to the one in Nashville is in Cobb County, same church, same setup. And even before this shooting, parents were asking their schools about what's your security plan, what do you do, what are the protocols, what are the procedures, what are your drills. So to answer your question, I would say what parents can do, what citizens can do, especially if it's a private school, is ask them those questions. What's your security plan? What are your drills? How often do you do them? Do you hire off-duty officers there? And take security seriously. The Jewish schools are the best. I mean, they take security very, very seriously. And Sandy Springs police officers are in all the Jewish schools here in Sandy Springs. And so that's my answer to the question. I don't know, Chief, if you got anything.
Yeah, no. I think an important piece is just that community involvement, that you're talking about, and talking to your kids about these things. And no one knows your kids better than you do. And when we do have national incidents like what happened in Nashville or what happened in Uvalde, Texas, getting the thought into your kid's mind and being able to talk to them on that level, just in the home, right? And obviously, schools are going to take, your piece of the pie and invite you in to, participate in whatever activities are going on. The biggest thing that you can do is when we have meetings at our schools is to show up. I think that's probably one of the biggest things is, nobody seems to want to show up for things unless it specifically involves them. But the more voices that you get in all of that, you're just going to have a better turnout and you're going to have a better result at the very end when you get that community involvement, and making sure that, that you're there. And like I said before, making sure you're talking to your kids about these on their age level and their appropriate type level. Like I said, at the school system or even, on a mass basis, we can talk about these things, but it may not affect them as much as you can with your own kids, and being able to talk to them on that level that that they're going to understand, and making sure that they know what to do in case of, something like that happens, a traumatic incident or, a mass casualty incident or whatever the case may be, and making sure that you're instilling into them, what they, what you think that they need in that circumstance, in that situation.
Chiefs, thank you very much. Yes, the head of school in Nashville did some tutoring for some kids in my daughter's class at Riverwood. So there was a connection to our community and to the Georgia connections there. So thank you. I thought it was very important that we hear from you two tonight, particularly in the wake of, again, another way too many tragedies in our schools. But I wanted them to know the level of cooperation that goes on between your two departments, the amount of communication, the amount of joint training, and the opportunities that Chief DeSimone just laid out. We really appreciate that cooperation, and we'll do anything we can to keep it going. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. With that, we'll close the work session. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, April the 4th, 2023. Will the city clerk please make the announcements and call the roll?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I would like to remind those in attendance, please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices at this time. Individuals who would like to provide public comment at a city council meeting are required to complete and submit a public comment card in advance of the meetings. Public comment cards are available online and at the chamber entrance. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Rusty Paul.
Present.
Councilmember John Paulson. Here. Councilmember Melody Kelly. Present. Councilmember Melissa Mueller.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Rochelle. Here. Councilmember Tibby DiGiulio. Here. Councilmember Andy Bauman. Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, have we received any public comment cards?
We have not.
All right, we'll close the public comment period. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. DiGiulio.
I move approval of the meeting agenda for Tuesday, April 4th, 2023.
We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Is there a second? Second. Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on approval of the meeting agenda. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve the consent agenda for Tuesday, April 4th, 2023.
We have a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on approval of the meeting agenda. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda is approved. Moving to public hearings, the clerk will please read the first public hearing item. Oh, there is no. It's in my script again. I read it just like I'm supposed to. All right, moving to new business. The clerk will please read the first item.
Agenda item 2023-093. This is consideration to approve an equipment loan agreement with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for air quality sensors, presented by Sustainability Manager Catherine Mercier-Baguette.
Ms. Mercier-Baguette.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this request this evening is for a partnership with Region 4 EPA that has a program that loans out some air sensors to local jurisdictions. Our intent with those sensors is to see if there is a tight relationship between the canopy and air quality. We suspect there is, but it's always better to have data to prove it. So we would get 5 sensors that would be loaned to us for 12 months. We would deploy them across the city, ideally in some public locations. We already had the approval from Chief Sanders to install them at fire stations, and also we have all of our parks, and we're talking to other organizations and private owners to see where we could locate them. Those sensors would provide real-time data on air quality that is publicly available, and it would be part also of a network that I believe is worldwide. So if you want to take a look at what kind of information we will get, you can look up the purple sensors and you will see that information. And the beauty of this program is that it is free of charge.
All right, you've heard the report of the Sustainability Manager. What is the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Dr. Kelly.
I move approval of agenda item 2023-093. Approval of an equipment loan agreement with the U.S. EPA for air quality sensors.
I have a motion by Dr. Kelly. Do I hear a second? Second. Been moved by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2023-093, approving an equipment loan agreement with the U.S. Department of Environmental Protection Agency for air quality sensors. Any discussion? Dr. Kelly.
Question. Okay, yeah, I see it now. We're going to be developing a baseline with this data. Gotcha. Correct. I had a couple of questions about the sensors. I wanted to get an idea of how much they cost. I know it won't cost us anything. I just want to know how valuable they are.
They are actually quite affordable because if you look at the map, there's a number of residential owners, and if memory serves me well, it's around $300. $300
okay.
each.
Another question about the sensors. Do they work for indoor air quality as well?
Is it the same model? Yes. So you can tell our urban forest coordinator is the brains behind this.
Yeah, we don't need to talk. Also, just about the agreement, what is our liability, if anything?
So if the sensors get damaged and are unusable, we will have to reimburse that $300 value for each one.
Okay. And doesn't Fulton County monitor air quality to some degree?
Yes, they do. There's a number of different organizations that do that. They are not all looking at the same parameters. So ours is for particulate matter specifically. It has other capabilities. And there's also different networks. So Fulton County has one, but it's not the same that we are talking about here.
Okay, and the name of the sensor is Purple Sensor. That's what you would Google if you want to.
It's in the memo. I do not have it in front of me, but it's Purple something.
Okay, I got it right here. Thanks. Thank you.
Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Catherine. Tell me, what happens after 1 year?
Well, after 1 year, we have our baseline, and from there we can decide if we want to purchase our own and continue the study, if we want to test out other areas, or if it's inconclusive and we just decide to not do anything.
Mr. DiGiulio.
Catherine, what's the purpose of this? Is it just to find out what the quality of our air is, or is there some follow-up on here, or I mean, what are we trying to achieve by putting these sensors in?
So there is no data that is available about the air quality. There are models and there are some points taken in time, but we don't have a strong baseline. And that's what we're trying to establish. And we're also hoping to be able to measure that correlation between the proximity of tree canopy and the air quality. But that's almost like a secondary goal. So once we have that 1 year of data, we're going to be better equipped to make a decision on what we want to do with that data.
And then what do we do with that data? Do we go out and plant more trees, or do we put air cleaning machinery out there? I mean, what is it we're trying to long-term accomplish with this?
So definitely we are interested in seeing the value of adding trees in areas where we have low air quality. That's definitely something that we want to look at, and there might be other policy that could be developed. I'm honestly not a whole lot familiar with air quality and what the city can do, but we believe it's good data to have.
We're not thinking of putting in any restrictions to our residents or our citizens about what they can and can't do because of the air quality.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Baumann.
Thank you, Catherine. Isn't it true that one of our adopted priorities is environmental sustainability, and that the work plan states a goal of being mindful at the very minimum of sustainability in all of the city's actions? And isn't that true?
Yes.
Would you say this work is designed to be consistent with that stated goal?
Yes, absolutely. There are several different goals that this ties to.
Anybody else? All right, Dr. Kelly.
When we do get the baseline data, are we able to compare that to just current, EPA standards, just to see where we fare? I mean, I think I have a pretty good idea, but okay.
Yes, we
Thanks.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-093, a motion to approve an equipment loan agreement with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for air quality sensors. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-94. This is consideration to adopt the Community Forest Master Plan, also presented by Sustainability Manager Catherine Mercier-Baguette.
Continue on.
Yes, sir. So this is an item that was presented to you, I believe, 2 months ago. So it is our Community Forest Master Plan. Really, the intent behind that is to get those 5 points for the Green Community certification. We are putting together 2 existing documents, which is the canopy study and the Community Tree Management Plan. So after the presentation, we held a work group meeting on March 2nd, and we addressed the questions that the citizens had. So these are the same slides that you have seen, so I will not spend a lot of time on there. There we go. So what we really changed in the Forest Master Plan is that we included points of clarification as a preface. So we address the questions that we have received during the presentation. So we confirm that the upcoming tree canopy study will contain some analyses that have not been conducted in the past. So we will look at specific areas, and we're going to look at zoning, we're going to look at council districts, we're going to look at stream buffers. There's a number of analyses that we will be doing this time now that we have the human power to do so. The tree management plan is only for city and city-owned trees and maintained by the city in the parks, in the right-of-ways, and at our facilities. We are not prohibiting any native tree species from plantings based on the biodiversity analysis that is contained in the tree maintenance plan. And the budget included also in that plan is a guide only. It does not reflect the actual amount that we budget annually for tree maintenance. And then the last point that we wanted to bring up is that planting new trees remains a priority for the city.
All right, you've heard the report of the Sustainability Manager. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Move adoption of agenda item 2023-094, request for to adopt the Community Forest Master Plan.
We have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Do I hear a second? Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2023-094, adopting the Community Forest Master Plan. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Just a quick question, Catherine, on the planting new trees priority. Where are we at right now, and can you project what's going to be planted this year? Are we going to hear more about that during budget? Where are we at on that? Do you know?
So every year we have this contract with Trees Atlanta to plant 200 trees, and we are meeting our goal for all the trees on public property. This year we focused on the floodplain properties, and we are adding the canopy tree back into that floodplain, so it helps with ecological services.
Go ahead. Keep going.
We are also continuing to provide trees for all of our transportation projects. I believe next year is going to be a really big year for tree plantings because we have such a large number of big public works projects.
And it would be interesting to look at net new trees. So, for example, if a transportation project removes certainly a tree at a certain standard, maybe something that would be a certain diameter, whatever the criteria would be, that we make sure that that's net new, not just, can you report on that? Do we track that, by the way?
We just started doing that. Now that we have 2 arborists who are reviewing permits, that's something that we can do.
I look forward to a more robust discussion. We have a lot of money in the tree fund. Would be nice to see that. And also, I think we need to have some continued discussion about mechanisms for not just public land planting, but private land planting and partnerships, particularly those trees that make the biggest difference in communities, street frontage, right-of-way areas. I don't have to answer it now, but I would hope that in the coming months, particularly as we go into budget and sort of mid-year review, that we look to really up that number, and I'm glad to hear that it's going to be a net number.
Any other discussion? Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So thank you very much. I guess a couple of quick questions. We're redoing this tree canopy study in 2023, so we're doing that this year?
Yes.
Okay, because I still have issues with the last one they did that showed such a reduction in tree canopy over such a large part of the city. I think that's a measuring deal as opposed to anything else. But let's see what the 2023 survey does. The second was, one of the recommendations at the end of this was to spend $194,000 over some period of time. And the first thing recommended was we cut down 304 trees. So are we actually, if we approve this tonight, that's what we're going to do, spend the $194,000 and cut down these 304 trees? It seemed like a strange recommendation. The first thing we do is cut down trees.
Yes, well, those trees are dead, dying, or hazardous. They are not healthy trees.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they would be cut down. So we had this plan done in 2015, actually, and it's an internal document that we have been using. So we did take out most of the trees that are near the public because there's obviously a safety concern with those trees. And we have budgeted, I believe, for the past 2 consecutive years, $50,000 for tree maintenance. And that's what we are using. And we're chipping away at this task. So we're not exactly following that budget. We just wanted to get an idea. And we're doing as much as we can each year.
Well, I've been trying to plant trees in my stream buffer along Herds Creek, and I can't keep the deer from eating them. They've destroyed about $1,000 worth of trees I've planted, including I've had to replace one tree 3 times that some buck decides to girdle by rubbing his head up and down all the way around it. So it's, when we try and add to the canopy, our forest creatures are taking some of it out. So we've got to try and figure out how we manage some of that stuff too. I mean, literally $1,000 worth of trees have been eaten up on the stream bank in the last 2 years that I've tried to restore. So it's getting frustrating. Mr. DiGiulio.
Catherine, you mentioned about taking down trees that are dying and are not in good health, et cetera, which of course I think we really need to do. Do we do anything on private property? And I'm thinking about, like behind my house is a big Georgia Power piece of property, 7 acres down there, which they had bought 30, 40 years ago. And I notice there are some very, very large dead trees. You can see them above the other trees. And then also on the Glen Ridge Drive, there's some trees down there which have a lot of lower branches that are dead. Do we do anything with the property owners to encourage them or require them or do something to trim these trees up that are not dead? Some of them are dead, need to come down. Other of them just need to be pruned up and stuff like that. Do we encourage our property owners to do that on any basis? And some of these might even be in the right-of-way.
So our right-of-way manager is actually in charge of that contract. I cannot tell you exactly what is the process to get any limbs that seem to be dangerous to be cut, but I do know personally I pointed out an issue on Herds Ferry, and immediately he had the crew out, and it happened. It got corrected.
Could you put that person in touch with me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Well, we don't want to take out all the dead trees. I have some in the back that I'm just letting go because they make great homes for woodpeckers. And they're not threatening anything. They're not. When they have fallen, they haven't done any damage, and I then take my chainsaw and cut them up. So if you really care about wildlife, you need to leave some dead trees up to provide homes for some of our other creatures that need them. So it's not something we just need to willy-nilly need to do. If they're not a threat to life or property, sometimes it's better just to leave them so that other, like say woodpeckers, I've got probably 5 or 6 woodpecker families that have been in my backyard for the last 5 years. Yep, Woody's there. Woody's there. Anybody else?
I have a question.
All right, Ms. Rochelle.
I noticed that we took out all the bushes in front of the fountains, and the fountains look great, but did we replant the bushes?
Yes.
Or we did?
We're working through that now. You're starting to see some of the shrubs and everything be brought back in. It's just taking multiple weeks for Rupert to do that, and it will be a smaller species that will not grow as tall as what was there.
Ms. Mueller.
So, Catherine, a question has to do with the plan for over 5 years. The cost the first year, I think, is $150,000, and then it goes down years 2, 3, and 4, and in 5 it comes back up to about $50,000. I mean, I just think those middle years seem off to me. I just know from managing 20, 30 acres of a urban forest and the community that I live, that number just seems low. Just making a comment. I know those are directional, and I saw the table that it all added up and tick and tied, but it just seemed low. So that's just one comment. And then secondly, since we're going to be getting into the budget, are we going to see that item for the $150,000 come forward in the budget, or what will we see?
There is money requested for tree maintenance. The exact number just escapes me. But again, we're not following exactly what's in there because some of the work has already been done. And also, and I lost my train of thought. My apologies.
The question was, what's going to be coming forward in the budget process?
City manager probably wants to discuss
It's
that.
too early to tell.
Okay.
Literally, we just started departmental budget meetings.
Okay.
So the number crunching, Tony and I will be hot and heavy into that in the next 2 weeks. So you guys will hear about that on May 2nd.
All right, thank you. And then one other question, or just maybe a comment, more so than a question. When we do this next canopy study, and I know that we can only impact what's on public property, and I think as Councilman Baumann was talking about the private, is there a way to identify critical swaths of canopy in the private sector that we may want to have some sort of just an outreach to those residents or those owners if we feel that they should be doing something and they're not?
Yes, and that's not going to be part of the tree canopy study, but it will be part of our environmental strategy, environmental stewardship strategy, where we're going to really look into conservation because there's more dimensions than just having trees. You know, you want trees that are healthy and you want a high biodiversity, and that there are a lot of factors that make a forest healthy. So that is something that we will absolutely do in our environmental stewardship strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, the canopy study, though, is of all land, not just public land, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody else? All right, hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-094, the adoption of the Community Forest Master Plan. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-095. This is consideration to amend the project budget for TS 106 Northside Drive at Riverview Road, Old Powers Ferry Road Roundabout Project. Presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Council, good evening. This first agenda item this evening request an increase in the budget for our project TS 106, the Northside Drive at Riverview Road, Old Powers Ferry Road Roundabout Project. With that, immediately following this agenda item, I'll bring to you then, with sufficient dollars within the budget, an award recommendation for the construction of TS 106, the north side at Riverview Road, Old Powers Ferry Road Roundabout Project. So with this budget amendment proposed tonight, staff is requesting a proposed budget increase to project TS 106 of $1.5 million to fully fund the project so that we may award construction, and as well purchase services for construction inspection on the project through the support of the consultant, geotechnical inspection and material testing, as well as hold on reserve a contingency of a little over $375,000 available, which is a reasonable contingency amount given the overall project budget now of just over $4 million. The new budget would be $4.4 million in this case. So with that, I first request a budget amendment ordinance approval for that $1.5 million to project TS 106. Those dollars would come from available T-SPLOS contingency funds within Tier 1, T-SPLOS, original T-SPLOS 2016 Tier 1.
You've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Move adoption of agenda item 2023-095, request to amend project budget for TS 106 Northside Drive at Riverview Road / Old Powers Ferry Road roundabout project.
I have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Do I hear a second? Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2023-095, amending the project budget for TS 106 Northside Drive at Riverview Road, Old Powers Ferry Road roundabout project. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-095, the amending the project budget for TS 106. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-096. This is consideration to approve a contract award to Vertical Earth for construction services for the Northside Drive at Riverview Road, Old Powers Ferry Road roundabout project, TS 106, and to authorize the same manager to execute the contract. Presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Council, first, thank you for your support with the budget amendment. It gives me something to talk about with this next agenda item now. And with that tonight, I bring forward to you a recommendation to award the construction contract for project TS 106, Northside Drive at Riverview Road, Old Powers Ferry roundabout project with Vertical Earth Incorporated, and authorize the city manager to execute that contract. A very brief summary on the bidding for this project. We originally put this project out for bid back in July of 2022. Received only one bid at the time, and thus, with the budget amendment you just heard, recognized that we had insufficient funds based on the bids we were receiving at the time, and that was the only one bid. We took a deep dive into the conditions around that bid at the time with our consultant and recognized a couple of different elements that we might be able to correct or improve the bidding for this project. One important element to that was the complexity of the project as given by our schedule and our constraints we placed on the bidding contractors. So to that end, we created a couple of different scenarios, a base bid and a bid alternate, as you would have. One where it was a 340-day calendar day, build the entire project under traffic the entire time. And the other was a 230 calendar day duration project, which allowed selective closures within the construction of the project. Most importantly to this, closure at north side of both Riverview and Old Powers Ferry for the duration of construction to reduce the complexity and allow the contractor area to stage and relocate utilities, and as well a full closure of north side Old Powers Ferry Riverview at that intersection with detours involved for a 60-day period during summer school out to allow for, again, uninterrupted work to include construction of walls, relocation of utilities, etc. Those bids came back far more favorably that next time. And I'd add one other thing that I wanted to pass on to staff, both our communication staff and our staff as well. And that was a contractor outreach that we performed with an industry day in January, where we solicited many of the contractors we'd worked with in the area, plus others that might be of the right capacities, et cetera. We invited them in and showed them our entire program for the upcoming year. And I think that, too, led to some contractor awareness and the fact that when we did put these bids out the second time, this time, when we advertised for bids on March 14th, received those bids, we received, in this case, 4 bidders, far better than the one bid the first time. Much closer within the engineer's estimates, or closer to the engineer's estimate this time, with Vertical Earth being the successful low bidder, with that reduced duration closures allowed bid alternate of $2,998,003.67, with Baldwin Paving, Shiv Construction, and Wilson Construction Management also tendering bids within that for that bid. Our construction budget, based on engineer's estimate, $2.94 million. And with that, staff recommends award to Vertical Earth in the amount of $2,998,003.67.
All right, you've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of agenda item 2023-096, request to approve a contract to Vertical Earth, Inc. for construction for the Northside Drive, Riverview Road, Old Powers Ferry Road Roundabout Project TS 106.
Motion by Mr. Baumann. Do I hear a second? Been moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2023-096, approving a contract award to Vertical Earth, Inc. for the construction of the Northside Drive at Riverview Road, Old Powers Ferry Roundabout. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
Marty, thank you. This is a significant, I don't know if I call this a critical infrastructure project, but it's a significant infrastructure project, however you want to define it. When I joined the council, I guess in 2014, this was one of the very first community meetings I had with folks over in the old Riverview Road area with the complexity of departing that neighborhood. They have two exits, and this is the northern exit. Right. And it's a misaligned road with heavy, heavy traffic coming up and down Northside Drive. So we've been around this project. I think it was in the middle of that. I remember that chart, the list, where we have scored intersection projects, and this sort of rose as others were being completed. And then we've been through a lot of different configurations. And then when T-Splosh, the first T-Splosh came around, it had made the cut, and I think this is a Tier 1 project, right?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay.
So within the intersection budget or the bucket.
That's right, but we're
first tier.
able
Yes,
to
sir.
fully fund it out of
Yes.
T-Splosh funds because this is a heavy. So first question is, has the inflation and the sort of, this project's been around on the board for a long time, but this is a big, big increase. Can you just briefly describe what you attribute that large increase to?
The vast majority of the increase, I believe, is market conditions at this time. We did have engineers' estimates a year or so ago that told us that the price was going to be higher. At that point, especially with contingency in place, we thought it better, let's actually open the bids, let's understand what it really cost, and then let's make that transaction. We could have balanced budgets again at some earlier interim there to attempt to bring the dollars closer, but now we know the impacts of market. Plus, we know as well the impacts of, say, trying to encourage some competition on the project, which we received
Marty,
this time.
we met out there this morning. I want to thank you, and Councilwoman Rochelle joined us. Thank you for doing that. We've met out there several times over the years on this project. The complexity of it, well, you showed us, you brought a book out. I mean, the design plan has got to be at least an inch thick. It's got to be 100 pages in there. So I know this is a complex project. I guess there's going to be time to talk about some things down the road as we go through this project, but I do want to, on the upfront, say there's going to be a lot of traffic rerouting. Some of it will be obvious, some of it less obvious in a really busy area with 285 being down there. Of course, the Braves, which is not a huge deal, but not from a volume standpoint, but when you're moving the traffic, it could have impacts. I would encourage a very robust communication plan. I suggested that I could send some potential questions for an FAQ on this, and would appreciate you all's assistance with that. And if you're not already working on it, if you all would work on that. And in particular, want to mention I have concern about the very, very awkward intersection of Dupree at Old Powers Ferry, where there's a one-way stop. So folks heading south are stopped, but those heading north, and for people unfamiliar with that, it can be a very, very confusing intersection. So I'd ask that we monitor that. Now, fortunately, most of that will be straight through because only people that are, all of the cut through will be gone because of the closure at Old Powers Ferry, but nonetheless, we want to be very, very careful for people over there. And lastly, we'll want to have some opportunity to have some conversation down the road about the aesthetic of this thing. Particularly, I had requested that we look at their options for the apron, just to make sure we get a little more detail
Absolutely.
Of the apron, because this is unlike some of the other projects, Riverside Drive at 285, and to a much lesser extent. It's a little more analogous to the at Northridge, although at Northridge, it's right off of 400, but Northridge is at the entrance to a neighborhood. So it's a little more analogous to that situation. And this is actually not right at the highway. It's up the hill. This is in the neighborhood. So looking for that aesthetic to be appropriate.
Right. We can investigate
options that would be GDOT compliant.
Yes, sir. And as well, as you recollect, the interior of or the roundabout is landscaped outside of that travel ring that's around the roundabout.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2023-096, approving a contract award to Vertical Earth for the construction services at the Northside Drive Riverview Old Powers Ferry Roundabout project. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item. Oh, we've lost the clerk. I'll read the next item. This is agenda item 2023-097, request for the mayor and city council consideration to approve the purchase of environmental in lieu of fee mitigation credits from the Georgia-Alabama Land Trust for the S2121T0060 SR400 multi-use path extension presented by Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. All right. And in the effort to get this project, this Path 400 project within Sandy Springs, advanced to construction let, we must first secure all of the environmental requirements required through Federal Highway Administration, Georgia Department of Transportation, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in this case as well. Secure and remedy or resolve all of those environmental requirements associated with the construction of this project. On one portion of this project, construction of a bridge is required where the path crosses Nancy Creek and right near the intersection with, Alan, what do we, intermittent stream that's immediately adjacent, or it feeds into Nancy. Okay. All right, so with that said, there's a requirement to stage construction and then erect a bridge very close to and spanning over Nancy Creek within this Georgia 400 path alignment. And that, in assessing those impacts during construction and post-construction development that needs to take place there, it's determined that we need to obtain environmental permit credits through an approved land bank in the interest of that disturbance in and around the creek and the restoration efforts we'll make there. To that end, we were very recently able to locate, and the market is in high demand for this, sufficient environmental credits available through the Georgia-Alabama Land Trust to purchase those credits. So tonight's request is your approval of the purchase of those land credits, estimated right now. We don't have the final exact number from the Corps of Engineers for their permit purposes yet. But an estimated cost of $322,650. Of that, 80% of those dollars, as supported by the ARC, have been provided already by the Atlanta Regional Commission, federal funds, and the city's match commitment to that, those environmental credits would be $64,530. Mayor and Council, do you have any questions regarding
All right,
this?
you've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council? Mr. DiGiulio.
I move approval of item 2023-097, approval of the purchase of environmental in lieu of fee mitigation credits from the Georgia-Alabama Trust.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Do I hear a second? Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2023-097, approving the purchase of environmental in lieu of fee mitigation credits from the Georgia-Alabama Land Trust. Any discussion? Mr. DiGiulio.
Marty, I'm looking so forward to getting that Path 400 that I made this motion. Would you tell me what we're talking about here?
All right, so in the interest of building a bridge, let me try, and I've got expert help here just in case. I need expert help around at all times. So we have to get into the stream buffer itself and stage construction. We'll have to bring in cranes. We'll have to stage. We'll even have to do some temporary bypasses of the creek. Culverts are involved that will go in and then come back out again while we construct this bridge, pour the concrete vents that fly the bridge, et cetera, through here. So we'll disturb the creek bottom while we're at it.
Disturb the creek bottom.
Yes, sir. So we'll disturb it. go in, build the bridge. Then when the bridge is built, we'll pull all of those temporary measures out, the bypass piping, et cetera, and then we'll armor that disturbed creek bottom now with some riprap to aid in restoration of the creek channel along the way. And that's what we're buying those mitigation credits for. It's that disturbance and then remedy within the creek bank that requires. Say
So
again?
those credits are like a permit to go ahead and do it, and we've got to pay $300,000 to build
Yes, sir.
this, to get the okay to build this bridge.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. As I say, I'm so much in favor of this path, of this trail, that I'm willing to go along with that. even understanding
300,000 is the total amount of credits. The city's piece is about
20% of that.
20% of it,
Yes, sir.
$60,000.
So ARC, recognizing that with federal rules, those federal requirements accompany the project, they've provided the 80% that goes along with this.
Thank you.
Sir.
Anybody else?
Mayor
Mr. Paulson.
So, two questions. One, where does this money actually go? Who gets this money?
Come on up, Alan. I believe
We're
that
collectively spending $322,000 to allow us to improve this stream, which makes me crazy. But
So-
separately, where does the money go?
I believe in this case, Alan, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's a conservation trust. So someone has placed their land into this status where it can't be developed somewhere else. That has a value to it, okay? And so that, Dan, you've worked this for municipalities.
When they start looking for the lawyer, they're in trouble.
Throw the hook at me. But somebody's placed their land in a trust which says, I won't allow development to happen here now to the extent that it would impact these lands and its ability to take on the waters of the U.S., et cetera. And so they've allowed an easement or an agreement on their land that has a value to it. This money goes to compensate those that pay into that trust to sell those rights. So they're selling development rights elsewhere so that we can develop here in an area of high urban.
Mayor, can I just ask a question that might clarify it? Is this akin to, I cut a tree here, but I plant a tree somewhere else?
Exactly.
It is, except that the EPA has created I call it a fiction, in that they established a measurement of usage of creek area. And like this bank that this will be purchased from, and a side note, if the Nancy Creek one costs $300 and something thousand, what do you think Colonial Pipe's going to pay for the one in Chattahoochee? It's a big one. But what happened, and I've been involved in several of these, the formula that EPA created allowed for entrepreneurs, folks with good hearts and wanting to preserve creek beds and reestablish natural creek beds. They went through the Southeast especially, and they found areas that the Army Corps would accept, that they reclaimed the normal creek bed. And then they got a measurement from EPA and the Army Corps as to how many credits that area would be. A farmer had 360 acres with a creek going through it. Army Corps gave him something like 1,700 credit values for that. And the person who established it, and it took about $200,000 worth of work, paid him about $200,000. Those credits today are probably worth $8 million. And what you do is that's banked. And we come along and we're going to do our work. The same folks that measured that and gave it that credit value will come and look at what we're going to do and say this has a credit value of 780, so we got to go buy 780 of those credits at whatever the market value is at the time. And it's like you said, it's like a tree balance. It's supposed to bring back the creek if we take away some creek.
Right. The Corps of Engineers requires these credits because it's the water of the U.S. So for us to get a nationwide permit from the Corps of Engineers, we have to show them that we are able to purchase these credits, the mitigation, and then we get the Corps permit that allows us to get the environmental clearance to build the project.
All right, so it still doesn't make any sense to me, but I understand this is the way the world works. Can we at least buy Georgia credits, not Alabama credits?
There
Why
are-
should my
these
money
are-
go to Alabama over this thing?
We tried. So there were no credits available.
So there are no farmers in Georgia that are
They're
getting their land.
It's like it was a joke. It's like a Taylor Swift concert. Everybody got all the credits that were available.
It's a Taylor Swift concert.
Oh, if you
analogy.
Oh, sorry. You can't get tickets for Taylor Swift, so there were no credits available in Georgia. You're supposed to get the credits are supposed to be within the floodplain, like the Chattahoochee, and when we went to try to get the credits, there were none available. This credit, the one that finally became available, it was in March. We just got, as soon as we found out we could get credits, we jumped on them and got them reserved. So this is the closest we can get for credits. So we tried to get Georgia first, even up and down, but this is still kind of in the floodplain, but it's down in the Alabama side, unfortunately.
Have nothing further.
Anybody else?
It used to have to buy them in the
Is
same
there any
soil
opportunity to confuse people further? We'd like to take advantage of it. All right, we've got a motion. If there's no further debate, then we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-097, approving the purchase of environmental in lieu of fee mitigation credits from the Georgia-Alabama Land Trust for the State Route 400 multi-use path extension. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item because they don't want the mayor to do it anymore.
I'm back. So agenda item 2023-98, this is consideration to approve the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 325 Mount Vernon Highway. That's tax parcel ID number 170071 00010395 through the use of eminent domain for the Johnsons Ferry Road Mount Vernon Highway Intersection Improvements Project, and that's project number TS-191, presented by City Attorney Dan Lee.
Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is one of three requests we're making tonight to exercise the use of eminent domain. Two or three general comments I'd like to make. One is that for this to get to your agenda tonight, I want you to know that a lot of hard work has gone into the design by the Public Works staff, and then the Land Acquisition Department has done, I think, a robust job of trying to settle with the property owners to make this as easy on them as possible. And the three that we're bringing to you tonight have extraordinary issues that require, we believe, the request to use the right of eminent domain. The second general comment I would make to you, and I'll use some stats to make my point, is that of the last 9 authorizations of eminent domain, we've used it twice. And both of those we had no choice in it. One of them is a title issue, and one of them is somebody who just does not want the project that's going through there. But the other 7, we were able to negotiate, and eminent domain was not even filed. So we can take heart that there is an opportunity, even after, if you find fit to approve the use of eminent domain, there is no guarantee that it will be required. The first property is owned by a company called Noose, Inc. It is the old bank building that is at the corner of Johnson Ferry and Boylston. One of the unique problems with this property is that it has been for sale. And there have been conflicting stories about what the sales price would be. It has not sold, and in the vague appraisal world, contracts to sell don't count. It's not a comp, and the other side believes it is, but it's not. Staff has redesigned the project to make it as less impactful as possible, and the number we bring to you tonight is the pure fee simple taking of what would be required for the corner. This is going to be the corner cutoff of the new road. It is very much a required part of the construction. The original number was $850,000, and we've reduced that taking request by the dollar number there, $659,034. We reduced the square footage taking by about 25%. So what we bring to you tonight, we believe and would recommend to you is a good use of eminent domain so that this project can go forward timely. all the projects tonight are also related to a tough schedule that staff is trying to meet in order to comply with Georgia Power's construction guidelines and timetable for the relocation of the utilities.
You've heard the report of the city attorney. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2023-098, the approval of the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 325 Mount Vernon Highway, tax parcel number 17-00071-001-039-5 through the use of eminent domain for the Johnson Ferry Road, Mount Vernon Highway intersection improvements project number TS-191.
Got a motion by Ms. Mueller. Do I hear a second? Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2023-098, the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 325 Mount Vernon Highway. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2023-098, approving the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 325 Mount Vernon Highway. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
This is consideration to approve the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 280 Hildebrand Drive. That's tax ID 17-0089-0007-0399 through the use of eminent domain for Johnson Ferry Road, Mount Vernon Highway intersection inspection project, presented by City Attorney Danley.
Mr. Lee.
Mayor, Council, this is related to the same project and is in the same vicinity as the last property. This is owned by Balconies Joint Venture LLC, and it is I would label it as a strip mall. And most of the taking, the 2,597 square feet of fee simple taking and the slope easement are related to the front part of the property. The appraiser believes it has an impact of $56,000, give or take, and is intricate to the project. Again, this is in the path of the utility relocation, and staff believes that we need to move swiftly to gain possession of it so that we do not slow down that relocation. We'd ask for authorization to use eminent domain.
You've heard the report of the city attorney. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2023-099, the approval of the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 280 Hildebrand Drive, tax parcel number 17-0089-007-039-9 through the use of eminent domain for the Johnson Ferry Road, Mount Vernon Highway intersection improvements project number TS-191.
Have a motion by Ms. Mueller. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2023-099, the approving the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 280 Hildebrand Drive. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on agenda item 2023-099, approving the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 280 Hildebrand Drive. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-100, consideration to approve appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 295 Mount Vernon Highway, tax ID 17-0089-0007-0407 through the use of eminent domain for the Johnson's Ferry Road and Mount Vernon Highway improvement project, presented by City Attorney Danley.
Mr. Lee.
Mayor, Council, this is also in the same area as the last two properties. This is the Chevron station located just right up Mount Vernon. This property design for this project has been changed about 3 times in order to lessen the impact on the property owner. It's very difficult sometimes when the road comes close to a gas station because the underground tanks take up more area than you see, and getting into those tanks can be very costly, and so staff has done a great job along with the help of the designer to design around those tanks and not impact the pumps, which can be very costly, cost a lot of money. And the number we bring to you tonight, I would submit to you, is about $500,000 less than when this part of the project started. So it's as tight as the city can get it and still do the project. We'd ask for authorization to use eminent domain. One other point I'd make, this property has a title issue. Over the years, I don't know how else to put this, it has too many owners. It has about 21 owners, and the lawyer representing most of the owners has asked that we use eminent domain in order to satisfy the title requirements that we need for Georgia Power and for the city's fee simple ownership.
You've heard the report of the city attorney. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2023-100, the approval of appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 295 Mount Vernon Highway, tax parcel number 17008900070407 through the use of eminent domain for the Johnson Ferry Road and Mount Vernon Highway Improvement Project, project number TS-191.
I have a motion by Ms. Mueller. Do I hear a second? Second. Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2023-100, the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 295 Mount Vernon Highway. Any discussion? Mr. Paulson.
Briefly, I'm glad you brought it up, Dan, but I want to commend staff for sharpening their pencil and figuring out a way to not take any more square footage of these properties, these parcels, than was required. I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple of years. We went to the skinny option for that whole corridor area there. Then we did some other adjustments last year. You've saved the city a ton of money by doing this. Hopefully this is the last one of these, but kudos for actually getting this as minimally invasive as possible.
Any other discussion?
I could add anecdotally, and I'm not really taking up for staff, but this is a true story y'all need to hear. Two of the properties you authorized eminent domain on, due to a design change, we were able to avoid them. And we've received a lot of grief from the property owners because we were not going to take the property. So that's a two-edged sword. I'll just bring that up to you.
All right. No further discussion. We'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-100, approving the appropriation of certain property rights and interests located at 295 Mount Vernon Highway. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2023-101, consideration to approve a purchase and sale agreement for property, interests, and rights located at 348 Mount Vernon Highway. That's tax parcel ID number 17007100040046 and 17007100040053 for the Johnson's Ferry Road and Mount Vernon Highway Improvement Project, presented by City Attorney Dan Lee.
Mr. Lee.
Mayor, Council, this property is kind of in the middle of the widest part of the project, and this property is the Link Counseling Center at 348 Mount Vernon Highway. The original appraisal had this property at $212,000, and the property owner countered with $465,000. Staff moved the property a couple of feet, and we didn't reappraise it, but negotiated with the property owner to this $185,000 amount. We believe it is a good outcome for both the property owner and the city. We would ask your authority to have the city manager sign the purchase sale agreement to purchase this property to complete the project.
You've heard the report of the city attorney. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve agenda item 2023-101, consideration to approve a purchase and sale agreement for property, interests, and rights located at 348 Mount Vernon Highway, tax parcel 170070040046 and 17007100040005-3 for the Johnson Ferry Road and Mount Vernon Highway Improvement Project.
We've got a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Do I hear a second? Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2023-101, the purchase and sale agreement for property, interests, and rights located at 348 Mount Vernon Highway. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Okay, Ms. Rochelle.
I have two questions. One, when we do this eminent domain, has the 7 that were closed, was that close to the asking price or what we originally offered? And also for this, the Link Center, is that for the sidewalk, do you know? Or is that for?
It's the widening of the road improvement and the sidewalk.
The road, okay.
Mm-hmm. The pricing, sometimes the other side comes up with a legitimate issue, in my opinion. Many times it is the cost of litigation that changes the amount of the appraisal and then the final settlement.
Mr. Bowman?
I think Tibby was up first.
Yeah, I've just been noticing the cost per square feet on these keeps going up. What is the cost per square foot on this one?
I don't think I have that today. They're all in the range of $47. If you'll notice, the other three were
$47.50, $58, and $60. And I was just wondering what this one was.
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, it's all right.
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
So Dan, it's true that on eminent domain we're not buying it, we're taking it, and then that's left. I mean, when you're actually doing eminent domain, then it's left to a court to, unless we settle it, it's left to a court to decide what the price is, right?
That's right.
All right. I'm glad we're not doing eminent domain on this one, though. The link provides a really, really valuable service to the community, very, very important. And I suspect let me ask you a different way, kind of following up what Councilwoman Rachel was asking. Are we, as a result of this, saving some parking spaces? That was one of the issues over here, going back several years.
The parking spaces for the link?
Yeah.
It's not. The issue there had to do with, there's what they called a counseling.
A contemplation garden or something, yeah.
Yes, and we've moved away from it.
Okay. All right. Well, regardless, I'm glad we've worked this out with them.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2023-101, approval of a purchase and sale agreement for property interests and rights located at 348 Mount Vernon Highway. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. Moving to reports. Since we last met, the Georgia General Assembly has gone home, so you can release all your children, and the roads and streets are safe again to traverse until January of next year. This was probably, we all know that there's been a significant assault on local control down at the General Assembly over the last several years. It culminated this year, in fact, to the point where even some of our general media have noticed that those who profess that the government closest to the people is the best sometimes lose sight of that when they have an issue they want to get fixed. So we had a lot of legislation down there. Some of it got through, some of it didn't, but more than normal got through. There was a bill to, and I've got to wait at least a little bit longer to get a further report because on the last day, so many different things are happening. They're amending bills, and you can't, until they're published, and you can't really figure out everything that happened. But at least here's some of the highlights. One was a de-annexation bill that on the periphery of a community, a group of people or a single property owner can request to be de-annexed from the city. But you can't create an island. The city, if it determines that the health and safety of the overall community is threatened, and they can deny a de-annexation, or if their general revenue or government obligation, general obligation or revenue bonds, then it can be denied on those bases. It's not really a threat to Sandy Springs. The only area that's would be on the area between Atlanta and Sandy Springs, because the others are in different counties. So that you would have a real challenge to try and de-annex and have them, and you can't create an island. So there would have to be an agreement for any de-annexation for the existing jurisdiction. That's, you can't just go back out into the county. You'd have to go into another city, at least in our situation. So it makes it very problematic. You can have no more than 10 parcels, but there's no limit on the number of 10 parcel applications that can be requested. So I don't think that's really a threat. The biggest issue, one of the biggest issues, biggest controversies was whether they're going to increase the amount of weight that trucks can go on our streets. It was driven by the agriculture and timber industry, but some folks in the also got aggregate and concrete trucks added to that list. During the negotiations over the bill, the concrete trucks and the concrete and aggregates were removed. There was a limit of 150 miles from the point of origin, and the 13-county Metro Atlanta area was excluded, so there's no real impact on us from truck weights. Other issue, there was what we would call a Christmas tree bill where they put all kinds of different things on one bill. We're still going through that, trying to figure out what's all in there. There's also, if you have a parcel that's at least an acre, we can't deny you the ability to drill a well. To drill a well. Yeah. It just says wells. Doesn't say. You can drill for just about anything you want if you have a lot, an acre or bigger. There's also one of the things from the land use point of view, it didn't change zoning requirements, but the bill that limits building moratoria to 180 days is passed, would become effective July 1. The legislature approved the redistricting of the district Sandy Springs. You know what all was there. The legislature, in its infinite wisdom, decided to give council a raise, and they gave me a small one, but a nice bump for council to keep council within the about what other councils in this area are receiving. We can't raise our salary during the course of a term, but the General Assembly can, and they did. So, so I've never been a big fan of pay raises, but since the others around us were getting raised to a certain level, in talking with the legislature, I didn't feel that it would be right to keep this council from being paid in a similar manner. The mayor got a $2,000 raise. I think council got about a $9,000 raise. So, and 8,000. It goes, what are you making now? 18, you go to 26, 8,000. So that's, that, if the governor signs that, then that will go into effect. And I think that's pretty much, I'll keep going through the legislation and seeing if there's more to find. So is any other member of council have anything to report? Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Last Wednesday, I attended a joint evening seminar session put on by both Sandy Springs Police Department and by Dan Salter, the director of the Atlantic Carolinas HIDA program, which is High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas Program. This is over at Temple Emmanuel. They had 50 or 60 people. Quite frankly, we should have had 500 people there. It dealt primarily with fentanyl, the abuse of fentanyl, the deaths that are increasingly happening across the country. And Sandy Springs and Atlanta are not immune to this, to the tune of 117,000 deaths a year attributed to fentanyl usage, overdoses. It's pretty sobering. One of the things that the speakers talked about was there are communities that have actively put together awareness programs to let their community know that the use of illegal drugs, and sometimes it's just a pill that you buy, in a party somewhere. This uncontrolled manufacturing of these has widely varying amounts of this fentanyl in it, to the point where if you get the wrong pill made by the wrong guy at the wrong time, you're dead. You die from this thing. So the idea that a community can put an awareness program together and let our community, our citizens, know about this, and essentially tell them, you're playing Russian roulette if you're taking these illegal, illicit drugs that you get from your buddy, you get from your friend, you can die from this. The more we can communicate this, the more potential we have to not have this increase as dramatically in Sandy Springs as in other areas. So I have one main proposal, but just put in perspective, one of the things he said that sobered me up right away was, picture a commercial airliner with over 300 people in the plane crashing every day of the year. That's the number of people dying in this country from fentanyl overdoses. One commercial airliner a day. So it's a big deal. It's serious. The chief was there. He can obviously expand on this way more than I can. My purpose of bringing this up is with mayor and council support. I think we as a community ought to put a program together, an awareness program together, essentially titled Not in Our City. And we reach out to the community, whether it's the churches, hopefully the schools. We had the police chief from the schools here. We could talk to them. But also just hold a couple of these sessions throughout the year. And the folks from this HIDA group will come, if requested, they will come and give this presentation and educate everybody about just how dangerous this is. So with that, I'd like the city to attack this, put an awareness program together, and city manager, you and the chief figure out, and communications folks figure out how to do this. Again, there should have been 500 people in this thing at Temple Emmanuel, and the fact that this is so important and so few people got to hear it just bothered the daylights out of me. So that's my request. I'd like to go forward with this, the details of which I don't have the plan, but let's put something together, and let's let everybody in this community know that this is just too dangerous to play with.
Councilman, we'll work on a plan. It would also be excellent to include Sandy Springs Fire Department, because they are often the ones being called to administer Narcan if we get that call soon enough. But we'll work on an awareness plan and get something out to y'all.
Well, anybody who's taking drugs that they buy on the street literally is taking their lives in their hands nowadays, largely because the drugs, whether it's pot, cocaine, anything, pills that you're buying online or from somebody on the street, almost all of them have some level of fentanyl in them, because unknown, and because of the mixing, you may get a concentrated dose in it, inadvertently, and it's just literally, you use the right word, you're playing Russian roulette with those drugs, and it's you're taking your life in your hands literally when you buy from your local drug dealer. So we do need it is a huge problem. I know the chief's briefed us in the past. What do we average, about an overdose a week, deaths, just in Sandy Springs alone? So, we need, I couldn't agree more, Mr. Paulson. Anybody else?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Bauman.
On a happier note, Saturday marks the opening. Hopefully the weather will be cooperating. I think the 14th year. At this point, sadly we lose Movies by Moonlight, the longest running continuing event we've got going, and something that is proud to start 14 years ago, but really, really grateful for the way the city has picked this up. And Erin and Anna are doing a great job and trying to innovate. It's a tough environment for markets, but the community looks forward to it, and I really look forward to it. So I look forward to seeing people on Saturday. Hopefully the weather will cooperate.
Well, we're not losing Movies by Moonlight, are we? The city's taking it over. So even though leadership Sandy Springs jettisoned it, we're going to pick it up. We're going to pick it up. So we're not going to. That serves an important part of our community. We want to make sure it continues. Anybody else? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we do need an executive session for the purposes of litigation, real estate, and personnel. All right, you got any staff reports? I didn't see any listed here, but okay. So is there a motion to move into executive session?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Paulson.
I move that we suspend a regular order, move into executive session for the purposes of litigation, real estate, and personnel.
Motion by Mr. Paulson. Do I hear a second? Been moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we suspend regular order and move into executive session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the moving into executive session. All in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, no. We're in executive session. As is our normal procedure, we will simply return to this room, return to regular order, and adjourn. There will be no further business conducted this evening. It's north of Johnson Ferry.
It's right across the bridge. When you go across the bridge, like from Riverside, you go up the hill. Yeah. It's that big right where the water.
The first set of roads to the left and right, north.
They've been laying, getting ready for this for months.
It's just, if you go up River River North is like the first or second street to the left.
Yeah, so I'm going up Johnson Ferry from
Johnson
Abernathy,
Ferry.
I guess.
No. You're on the wrong side.
Yeah.
You go from Johnson Ferry, like you're coming down from the Abernathy Arts Center, across the river. It's about 1,800 feet up the river from there.
Yeah, all the homes are, I mean, they're all way up on the hill, and that's why they.
No, but we want the bridge at Rogers Road.
Yeah, there's
I
nowhere to
thought
put.
we wanted to end where the dog park was, on our side.
Oh, this is way down.
No, it's
That's
up.
way down.
This is way. It's 1.6 miles down the road.
Yeah.
Right, that's 1.6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Mr. Paulson moves that we suspend the executive session and return to regular order. Is there a second? It's seconded by Mr. DiGiulio. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the return to regular order. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We are in regular order. Mr. DiGiulio. Mr. DiGiulio moves adjournment, seconded by Mr. Paulson. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned at 8:55.